Fredreick Douglass was a remarkable figure in American history. Despite being born into slavery and experiencing immense hardship and brutality, he educated himself and became one of the most influential voices in the fight against slavery and for civil rights.
Douglass was born with the name Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey on February 14, 1818, in Talbot County, Maryland.
After he successfully escaped slavery in 1838, he and his wife adopted the name Douglass from a narrative poem by Sir Walter Scott, The Lady of the Lake, at the suggestion of a friend.
Young Frederick lived with his maternal grandmother, Betty, on a plantation. At the age of 10, his mother died while the identity of his father remained unknown.
By 12 years old, despite the ban on teaching the slaves to read and write, Sophia, a wife of the slaveholder, taught Frederick.
He continued to learn a few more lessons from the white children in the neighborhood.
As a young boy, he was determined to learn to read and write, even though it was forbidden for slaves to do so.
He continued to educate himself throughout his life, and his eloquence and intelligence made him a powerful advocate for the abolition of slavery.
In addition to his work as an author and orator, Douglass was also actively involved in politics.
He was appointed as a government official by President Rutherford B. Hayes, becoming the first African American to hold a high-ranking government post.
In 1848, Douglass attended the Seneca Falls Convention on Women's Rights, where he gave a powerful speech supporting women's suffrage.
He was the only African American male in attendance, and his speech was well received by the women's rights activists present.
In 1852, Douglass gave his famous speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," at a meeting of the Rochester Ladies' Anti-Slavery Society in Rochester, New York. The speech addressed the hypocrisy of celebrating independence and freedom while slavery existed in the United States.
During the American Civil War, Douglass became an advisor to President Abraham Lincoln and advocated for recruiting African American soldiers into the Union Army. After the war, he continued to fight for civil rights and suffrage for African Americans, as well as for women's rights.
In 1877, Douglass was appointed as United States Marshal for the District of Columbia by President Rutherford B. Hayes. He was the first African American to hold the position.
Douglass passed away on February 20, 1895, at his home in Washington, D.C. He is remembered as a prominent abolitionist, suffragist, and civil rights activist, and his legacy continues to inspire those fighting for social justice.
Overall, Frederick Douglass was a towering figure in American history, whose legacy continues to inspire people today in the ongoing struggle for human rights and equality.